Hello kind people of YouTube and welcome back to another video. In this video I really just want to talk about some statements made by SEC Commissioner Hester Peirce because I feel like she always speaks truth about these issues and is one of the few reasonable voices on cryptocurrency regulation within the actual regulatory bodies. She is of course in the SEC, she is one of the handful of people who make these decisions. And I feel she deserves to be celebrated for some of these statements, so let's take a look at what she said the other day. United States Securities and Exchange Commission Commissioner Hester M. Peirce has argued in favor of self-regulation for cryptocurrency markets when possible. The commissioner made her remarks during a public talk together with former Commodity Futures Trading Commission Chairman Gary Gensler at the MIT Bitcoin Expo 2019 on March 9th. The context for Peirce's comments was a proposal from Gensler that a more robust and unified national-level regulatory framework would be desirable. In Gensler's opinion, this would encompass not only trading platforms that offer security tokens or complex investment instruments, but also those that list commodities such as Bitcoin. To this, Peirce responded. One really important thing to remember is that people regulate each other in their interactions with one another, and that's the whole purpose of the Bitcoin idea, that it would be a community that would be able to regulate itself. As problems arise, people in that community are thinking about how to deal with those problems. One model would be to have a government regulator, but I don't think that's the only model. So essentially the idea that she's putting forward here is a very libertarian, very free market idea of dealing with Bitcoin. As Bitcoin is a commodities, or rather the cryptocurrency market can be considered a commodities market, her argument here is that it should be able to self-regulate within its own community, that is pretty much what it is already doing and what Bitcoin was created to do. Bitcoin, of course, stemming from a very freedom-loving ideology. Now, I'm not trying to say here that libertarianism is the only freedom-loving ideology, but it certainly is one where personal freedom is one of the most highly valued elements. And she's essentially putting that argument forward here. I personally support this in the area of cryptocurrencies as well. I'm not sure how well that argument can be applied to traditional monetary markets, but to a commodities market, I fully agree. Anyway, let's continue. Gensler's arguments in favor of extending national-level regulation over a broader spectrum of crypto trading centered on improving investor protection, coordinating money laundering prevention, and addressing the current regulatory and enforcement discrepancies across different states. Here, once again, you get into he's arguing against this typical libertarian idea here by arguing that essentially people need to be protected from themselves. They need to be protected from the markets, they need to be protected from risk, that we need to make sure that fraud isn't possible, that's the second argument here, and also that everything is unified. In a short debate with Gensler over tackling this jurisdictional regulatory fragmentation, Peirce emphasized the status quo, in which states have a statutory obligation to enforce money transition laws under the Bank Secrecy Act, but may nonetheless regulate aspects of the cryptocurrency markets with significantly different degrees of latitude. She then stated, "That's the regulatory model we've chosen. I think, again, these markets could regulate themselves if we lived in a world where we allowed that." So essentially, he is putting forward the idea that the only way to properly regulate all of this is to unify it in a pretty strict framework that is on the federal level. And she's responding, yes, we can have it unified, but we can do that by deregulating, by allowing them to regulate themselves, because that way they will also be the same framework across the entire country. Peirce continued to advocate for a lighter regulatory touch when possible. She nonetheless affirmed that security offerings must comply with the SEC's registration requirements and supported the ongoing efforts by major crypto trading platforms to register with the agency as either exchanges or as alternative trading venues in order to be able to compliantly list security tokens. The reason I read this out is to emphasize that we do have a supporter, a very strong supporter, who is high up in these decisions, who is involved in these decisions, who doesn't always have the majority opinion, but whose opinion gets to influence the decisions made here. And also to just showcase her clear thinking. She's a very intelligent person. She's making very clear, concise, well-established arguments, and I appreciate that a lot. These are quotes from a panel discussion, essentially. These are not any prepared statements. This is what she was saying just as she was talking, and you can see a clarity of thought here that I appreciate a lot, and that I especially appreciate coming from someone within the SEC who makes these decisions, who is currently on the opposition side, but who is involved in these decisions and who might be able to change minds within the SEC at one point even, because as you can see here, she's a very, very intelligent person. Now this article at the end linked to her dissent opinion from last year when the Winklevoss at ETF was denied, and I just briefly want to look at that as well. Here we have the article also from Cointelegraph about that, because here you see the actual legal arguments, well, not legal, I can't think of the correct term right now, but the actual technical arguments that she was supplying, and she also really uses her wit and her intelligence to really cut through some misconceptions and some of the things that she considers to be serious issues. And I just want to, I know this is news from last year, but I just want to point it out again. I just want to read through some of this because in these hard, long bear market times where it sometimes feels like a lot of people have given up on crypto, it's just wonderful to have her, to have a crypto mom, as some people call her, essentially speaking up for us. And I just want to read some of the quotes from her statements here, where she really cuts through some of the main problems here, and she identifies multiple. Here, this first quote: "The Commission erroneously reads the Securities Exchange Act, which requires that the rules of a national securities exchange be designed to prevent fraudulent and manipulative acts and practices. It focuses its decision not on the ETB shares to be listed, but on the underlying Bitcoin spot market, instead of the ability of BZX to surveil trading off and to deter manipulation in the ETB shares listed and traded on BZX." So a very technical argument where she essentially implies that there's an issue with the very core of the SEC argument. Then further she says that the concerns underlying the SEC disapproval order go to the merits of Bitcoin itself as an investment, and that if the disapproval order's rigorous standards were applied consistently, many other commodity-based ETPs would be in peril, as rumors of manipulation plague many commodity markets. This is such a powerful argument that a lot of people are missing. Because the argument is always, oh, the SEC is just making sure that manipulation can't happen. They're just applying the same rigor to the crypto market that they're applying anywhere else. But it doesn't really seem to be the case, because there's ETPs, ETFs in a bunch of different commodity markets. And a lot of those are very clearly manipulated, are at high risk of manipulation, are at high risk of fraud, and they are still allowing them. And the fact that they don't allow them for cryptocurrencies seems more like some people's personal opinions about crypto itself, not the markets, not how regulated the markets are, not how secure the markets are, but rather that some people in the SEC do not like the concept of crypto or of Bitcoin, and as such are opposed here when that is not consistent with their opinions usually. Once again, very clear, very cut to the point thinking from her here. She further argued here that when we do finally approve an ETP on Bitcoin, investors may reasonably but incorrectly conclude that the investment carries with it the SEC's imprimatur, I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce that word, because the Commission has performed due diligence on the underlying market and, through its approval, is certifying the quality of that market. She made two other points here. The disapproval precludes investors from accessing Bitcoin through an exchange-listed avenue that offers predictability, transparency, and ease of entry and exit. They will be relegated to the spot market, which will not benefit from the increased institutional discipline that approval of this product would bring. What she does here, and which is clear if you read between the lines, is she's essentially accusing the SEC here of hypocrisy. Because they're doing all of this under the umbrella of keeping investors safe, but by not approving an ETF, they are instead forcing investors to go to less secure avenues, to go to the spot market, which does not have a lot of the security features, a lot of the safeguarding features that an ETP has, that an ETF has. So very, very smart arguing here. And then her last argument here. Lastly, she argues that the rejection demonstrates a skeptical view of innovation, which she argues could lead to adverse effects well beyond this particular product, stating boldly, "I reject the role of gatekeeper of innovation, a role very different from, and indeed inconsistent with, our mission of protecting investors, fostering capital formation, and facilitating fair, orderly, and efficient markets." This is why I love this woman. She cuts through the crap and goes straight for the real issues here. She makes very technical arguments. She directly responds to the points being raised here for the rejection, and she pretty much decimates them. And then she goes deeper and looks at some of the underlying issues and essentially looks at the philosophy underlying all of this that she finds, and that I personally also find not acceptable, where the SEC's decision here is A, hypocritical, because it actually puts people in more danger and because it's not consistent with the rigor that they apply to other areas, and also seems to be anti-innovation, anti-future, anti-new developments, anti-new technologies, anti-new developments in the financial markets. Of course, you have to keep in mind that crypto is also completely unique in that it allows the kind of unprecedented access to normal people that much of the financial world previously has not had. So this is very threatening for the traditional financial world. And that might include some people who are sitting on the SEC's board, who are commissioners, who can make decisions there. All in all, I just think this woman is wonderful, and I know she's celebrated plenty within the crypto world, but I just wanted to take this video to really point out how much she's doing for us, how frequently she is the voice of reason in that space, how frequently she's a voice of support for us in an area where a lot of people do not support the cryptocurrency space. She is a shining beacon of light in a very unwelcoming traditional finance and regulation world for crypto, and I do hope that she will continue doing her fantastic work. And that is essentially all I really wanted to talk about in this video. You may have noticed this is kind of a new format. I've realized that lately I have been too busy and too inconsistent to really give you daily news updates where we talk about all the important stuff. At least for the foreseeable future, I won't really be able to do this on this channel. So instead, I'm pivoting to a bit of a new format. Instead of doing 15 to 40 minute videos where I try to look at all the big stories from that day or from the last couple days, I'm going to be looking at individual stories, individual issues, or looking at a few news stories that can be put on under one topic. And I will do those videos inconsistently. Sometimes I might upload 2 or 3 videos a day. Other times I might upload no videos at all for a couple days. I will do this as I have time and as these issues catch my attention. So it's just, it was not tenable to continue doing the same thing on the channel because I simply do not have the time lately. But this I can do, just making videos whenever something catches my attention, whenever something interesting is going on, or as in this case, when I just want to celebrate something. And I hope you guys will join me on that. As always, thank you so much for watching. These articles will be linked in the description if you want to read them yourself. And if you want to support the channel, there's a Patreon as well as some donation addresses and some other stuff in the description. Any support greatly appreciated. Thanks so much for watching.